Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our final panel, our main stage, Best of the Summits today. So my name is Robyn King. I am from Payments Canada. Some of you may recognize me as the host of the Summit series, which we run throughout the year, and I'll be moderating today. So whether you are here in person with us, joining online via live stream, or joining later on via on-demand, welcome, thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us this morning. So we've experienced almost 3 days packed with content. We had our main stage, we had our Fintech stage, we've had over 70 breakout sessions, both in person and virtually, and we've had a great exhibitor hall and some fun events, and I think my favorite has been really to have those spontaneous connections and reconnections with people, something so unique to being back in person. I would just like to take a moment to thank all of those who traveled significant distances to be with us today and the rest of this week. We actually had the most international visitors that we've ever had at the summit. So a special shout out to those who joined from Chile, Finland, Germany, Ghana, India, Ireland, Italy, Portugal, South Africa, my personal favorite, Switzerland, Uganda, United Kingdom, the United States, and I believe there are 3 people that joined us all the way from New Zealand. So thank you so much, and we hope you've had a great summit, and we hope you've had a great time in Canada, even despite this miserable weather, and we promise it actually does get better. So, in case you weren't able to catch everything, and unless you were a superhuman, I'm sure you didn't catch everything, today I have with me a panel of speakers that joined us over the last 2.5 days. And today we're going to talk about their experiences of the summit and make some predictions of what we may see in 2024 when we return. So before we do that, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump straight in. Cyrielle, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so hi everybody, bonjour. So my name is Cyrielle Chiron. Everybody calls me my Siri. I don't know why I say my full name anymore. So I lead strategy at Peoples Group. And Peoples, we have been providing financial services to the Canadian ecosystem since 1884. Peoples, not me, just being serious, 1884. And we also very proud to partner with Fintechs to enable them to provide them with the tools and guidance for them to be successful in the Canadian marketplace.
Wonderful. My name is Layial El-Hadi, and I'm the Executive Director at Fintech Cadence. We're a nonprofit organization that looks to develop the fintech ecosystem across Canada. And I know that's very buzzwordy. We were laughing about that earlier. What we truly do concretely is, 1, work with academia to make sure we're engaging industry and academic research in fintech. 2, work with very early stage startups, anywhere from I have an idea all the way till about pre-Series A. And last but not least, and probably the most relevant to this conversation today, we work directly with financial institutions and stakeholders in the fintech space to ensure that there is a bridge between the fintech world and the incumbents. So very closely to what we do together.
Thanks, Neil. Darrell.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. It's great to see such a wide audience still here after 3 full days. I'm sure everyone's tired of all the buzzwords and everything that's been going on, but it's great. I lead all our products and platform teams at Mastercard, from our consumer credit, debit, and prepaid business, modernization of our commercial operations, to our new payment flows, everything from open banking, installments, crypto, as well as probably most importantly, another topic that was heavy this week was around cyber intelligence and our data tokenization platforms.
Thanks, Darrell. So before we go too far into payments, this was our first year back in person since 2019. So perhaps tell me about each of your experiences, and why do you think it's important for us to get together as an ecosystem? Darrell, I'll start with you there.
Yeah. Well, I guess firstly, it's so nice to be like 3 days and not in front of Teams or Zoom. And it's, even though I know there are people are on the line now, and there's definitely value and benefit to, because of the inclusivity of that. So for those who are on the phone, hi, it's great to see you. But I think beyond just these types of forums and being able to get access to them, it's the collision conversations, and it's the manifestation and discussion around ideas beyond just the content that are in the forums. When I think of Mastercard, collaboration isn't something we do, it's who we are. We work with governments, we work with financial institutions, we work with fintechs, we work with regulators, we work with merchants and consumers in pretty much every country around the world except 5, I think. So it's at our core. And so being able to see the manifestation of ideas, because at the end of the day, when you think about it, like technology and AI on its own is not a strategy. APIs are not an endpoint. And cloud is not a destination. It's really how do we synthesize these and deliver value for users? And that comes through the collaborative discussions that happen around events like this.
Absolutely. Thanks, Darrell. Cyrielle.
Yeah, so I agree. I feel like 2019 seems like it's a century ago. When we were talking with some people, like, last year I saw you, actually I saw you 3-4 years ago. So it was really good. And just to say, to be able to be in person, talk, having those discussions, it's really important. We are doing better things when we are together and we spend the time to talk and bring solutions to the marketplace. Look at Links, for example. Like we succeed to collaboratively deliver something great for Canadians. And it's opportunities like the summit that help us to really stop. Like there's lots of things going on. Like payments goes fast and everything goes fast around us. There's a lot of opportunities, but spending the time to actually stop, pause, reflect, having those conversations, thinking about what's going on around us and triage a little bit what are the opportunities. Really, this is something that helps us moving forward, just going better. So you can hear in my voice, I did a lot of talking. so it was very, very like dynamism, I don't know if it's the right word, but it brings us like a lot of energy and positivity back to the ecosystem.
Yes, absolutely. I think especially this year, coming back in person, on the first day I battled to actually get to sessions because I was stopping every few meters to talk to someone. Layial, how about you?
I have to add something that they haven't said, right?
Please do.
So obviously ditto on everything that was said. Can I say the food was good?
Yeah. Food was pretty good.
It was wonderful. No, I mean, all jokes aside, obviously everything that's been said, I think maybe 3 things I would add from our perspective, especially seeing the fintech landscape. One is the scalability. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of buzzwords. So the scalability, the amount of people that you can meet at a short period of time, that's been incredibly helpful. The ease of how you can meet the people as well. So being able to say, hey, actually, I know somebody from Mastercard who's here. Let me introduce you really quickly. And I think that touches a lot on the collision conversations you were talking about. And last but not least as well, from the fintech space, sometimes the payment system can seem intimidating. So being able to be in person and see, look, you can talk to them. They're people too. You can have conversations around it. There is a face behind the tech. Has been also really wonderful. And it's actually my first in-person summit. So definitely will be a bigger advocate for it next year as well.
Absolutely. So obviously, over the last 3 days, we've talked a lot about payments innovation, naturally. If you reflect on everything that you've seen and talked about, what do you think are your biggest takeaways from this year's summit? Cyrielle?
Yeah, so I got some notes from everybody, but I will remember that I've been on a few panels and seeing everybody is great, but seeing that the conversation is still there and is still dynamic, so that's important. There's a lot of new things that I've heard. That's also good, to be able to see that things are keep moving. A lot of conversation about fraud as well. That was like key. That is important to say. How do we make sure that all the innovation that we're putting together, bringing forward, are safe and secure? I have a public announcement to say. A few of you have lost their credit cards, apparently, and they are at reception. So I've done my part of this. So data as well was big. Like, what can we do with data? What can we do with AI? How do we bring everything together? Open access is still a conversation that is there, but it was good to hear, from our regulators to see that it's still at the center of still key for them, because we really need that. Talking about banking, pushing into the future, cross-border as well was very important. The small businesses as well. We talk a lot about consumers, but we heard that from the panel earlier, corporates and small businesses also have needs, and we need to make sure we provide solutions to them. And those conversations was bringing the use cases to help them better. So I can go on and on. You need to stop me talking. So
Layial, I'll give you a chance to talk.
Perfect. So I will preface that I'm coming very much from a fintech landscape. So I think one of the things that kind of stood out to me was the ownership of innovation and who is responsible for innovating and who's not. So one thing I've noticed is everyone innovation is anything moving anyone forward, right? So the fact that a lot of people in this room are playing a huge part in that was very, very refreshing to see, and very refreshing to see that the conversation is not siloed on, well, fintech is going to be the innovators and we're going to be the ones doing things normally or regularly. Careful to say normally. Regularly. So I think that's been really wonderful to see, is that innovation is actually owned by everybody in the room, and that more and more innovation for the benefit of our consumers, small businesses, and Canadians alike is the target for everybody. The second thing I also noticed, and I had this conversation with Ryan from Payments Canada, I'm not sure if he's in the room here, but we were talking, we were talking about, I was in the Canadian Fintech Summit 2 weeks ago, and so we were talking about the differences in conversations that were taking place during the Fintech Focus Summit versus now the Payment Summit. And I do think that there needs to be a lot more bridging happening. So if I can be very, very generalist, if you look at the Payment Summit as incumbents really looking and seeing how they can move things forward, and the Fintech Summit as those who are trying to disrupt what's happening, those conversations should not be happening in silos. There should be a lot more synergy happening around some of the conversations that they're focused on, some of the way they're delivering products. Because like I said in the first point, everyone just cares about how consumers are getting their products in the best way possible, in the most secure way. So there's alignment in that. I think what needs to be done more succinctly, especially having been in a lot of the panels here, is bringing those conversations closer and closer together. And then the last thing I think is just the amount of opportunity in payments in Canada is ridiculous. Like, I almost want to go and be an entrepreneur now, put in my resignation and say, actually, I have 15 ideas that I think we can implement. Fintech, yeah, right, I should do it. I'm not resigning from Fintech Cadence, just so that everybody is aware. But I think Fintech is oftentimes synonymous with unbundle a service in an ecosystem, unbundle one part of it and do it really, really well, integrate technology into it, and then now create a business out of it, sell it, and then maybe you can bring it back to a financial institution, or maybe now you can go and add on more products to it. And I think there is a lot of that can actually take place from the payment systems and the conversations we're looking at now. So I think those would be the three things: ownership of innovation. Here am I, I'm trying to summarize and I forgot what I've said. Ownership of innovation, bridging conversations closer together, and of course the endless amount of opportunities available in the payment space.
Absolutely. And I think, I think the conversations are evolving and they're going in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Even since the last time we were in person.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that it's moving in that right direction. Darrell, how about you?
Yeah, let me see if I can add some context to some of these things. I think there's a few different things, and it's kind of interesting just thinking of the ecosystem at first, and I almost feel like we're kind of like in a third generation. If we try and humanize our ecosystem a little bit, Mastercard's been in Canada around 50 years, payments and stuff has been about 50 years. So it's almost like three generations. You've got your parents and you've got your kids, and a lot of the conversations today were either around the here and now, which is what we're working on, or kind of what the next generation, that they might be like in its early stage. It's like having a 5 or 6 year old kid. It's like these new technologies, and you don't quite know what they're going to be yet. You have some ideas, you have some hopes on what they're going to be, but not sure exactly what they're going to be yet. But I think probably three takeaways that kind of surround payments. One, I would say prioritizing cybersecurity needs to be a priority for everyone in the financial ecosystem. Sorry, that's dark, almost the way I said that, but it's a reality, right? Cybercrime in this country is up more than 600% since pre-pandemic levels. We are one of the most targeted nations on earth on a per capita basis. Why? Maybe we're so nice, we're so gullible or friendly, who knows? But there's a lot of attacks that are going on. There's one going on right now with a partner. And it's things that we see, and obviously I'm very proud with the work that Mastercard has done on heavily investing in cyber intelligence, not only for our partners, but in this ecosystem. We have our Global Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity here in this country, and we do and manage transactions around the world. But for the average business who gets some sort of a data breach, the average cost is $5.5 million for companies in Canada. That's a big dollar to swallow. These are real numbers. And so there's a lot that we need to work, and when we talked about collaboration earlier, how do we work collectively to protect the ecosystem further? So that's probably one. Second, Sasha, our president, kicked off at the beginning. She talked about great future trends and some of the things that are going on. I highly recommend, if you didn't see her keynote, to either watch it on video or read the report online. There's some great critical thinking in there. One of the elements was around intelligent experiences. And so when we think and where things are going, the proliferation of tokenization, you should never have to be pulling out a card and touching a physical terminal, period, right? Like that's where we're going. That next generation will be at. And mobile point of sales are just about here already, so every phone will be a point of sale. But so all the other devices around you. So think even most cars being a lot smarter and digital these days, the tokenization of your car. So you should never have to go up to a parking lot and pull out a ticket and then try and wait in line to actually pay. You should just be able to drive in and out. That's just the way it works. So in some ways, the way I think about that is people are looking at optimizing the checkout. I think actually the checkout goes away and it becomes more about the check-in, which it kind of leads to the next point around what does that next generation focus on? It's probably more about the rise of the data economy. And again, that's a buzzword, but when you unpack that a little bit, there's behavioral analytics, there is transaction analytics, there's identity analytics, there's device analytics, there's account analytics. All of these things are surrounding, from a data set standpoint, the data economy around transactions. So when you combine things like connected finance and open banking with real-time rails, the data economy is where the majority of innovation is going to happen.
Thanks, Darrell. And you'll be pleased to know the Beanfield, I just had to tap my phone to get into the parking.
There you go.
There we go, I didn't have to lose my ticket.
Progress.
So looking ahead and based on what you did here at the summit, what do you think the greatest opportunities are for us? And Layial, I know you touched on some of this in your previous answer, but maybe you've got some more to add in terms of what are the opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, one, I think I'm always going to be an advocate for a conversation around what is actually happening from the fintech space in there. So I think those opportunities are first and foremost there. I don't want to be too repetitive, especially to what was said in the last panel, but a lot of the technologies, a lot of the services that are being offered, BPNL, I'm going to have to say seamless payments, all of those kind of things are places for opportunities. So I'm just going to be advocating conversation, dialogue in terms of what's happening. And then a lot of knowledge share, I think, is also one area of opportunities that I think we can look at.
Thanks. Cyrielle, do you have some to add?
Yes, I will continue as well on those dialogue, where I continue to have those conversations, even if they are difficult conversations, even if we don't all agree, continue the dialogue is very important. In terms of trends and opportunities, so I agree with what was said before, but for me, who loves looking at trends and what's going in the future, is to see all the things we've been talking about. Banking as a service, obviously very close to people's, but embedded finance, tokenization, like it's not only just words that are out there, there's actually real use cases that are being put forward and are going to become something. So that is, for me, very excited to say that actually we can provide the value to Canadians of the things we were talking about. It is coming. It is going to revolutionize, the payment system, the banking system, and everything. Because payments is, I've said a lot, like it's very crucial. Like without payments, the economy doesn't work very well. So continue to think about how we can bring this innovation and put Canada, at the front stage, in a global stage. We continue to push forward, because if we don't continue to innovate, we're going to be left behind. So we need to really push and provide the value to consumers. I wanted to say another one, but I forgot, so I got to let you go.
Maybe, if I can add one then, maybe urgency around a lot of these conversations. I think maybe, and I know we're going to lead into that towards the end, but I think creating that urgency of like, look, we know what we want to do, we know what needs to happen. Just checking if Abraham is still in the room. We know what we need to push to create that urgency, but I think that's one thing I would add as well. If I may take some of the time.
Yes, no, you can too.
Thanks, ladies. Darrell,
What am I looking forward to?
what do you think the opportunities are?
Well, I think a couple things. By this time next year, I'd love for us to be talking about what applications we're building on top of real-time rails, not just talking about the real-time rails. So we're very excited on a number of different opportunities there. And I do think Canada will have one of the most robust and sophisticated systems out there. So looking forward to that. And then also, I think a lot of opportunity around borderless rails. And when I use the word borderless rails, I don't necessarily just think about geographies. I think about digital borders as well. Because the seamlessness between systems, the interoperability between systems, and as you have more and more complex data, how and where that data is being managed, the privacy controls that are in place, the consumer being aware of everything that's going on. How do we make transactions much more borderless and a lot less friction? So whether doesn't matter whether someone's in New Zealand and you need to pay them or the food truck outside, but it's enabling a whole bunch of different interactions at a much more seamless level.
Thanks, Darrell. Layial, that's another buzzword for you. You can add borderless.
I know. I was just thinking, was there actually a food truck outside?
I don't know.
There's enough good food in here. Okay, so let's make some predictions about what's to come. So what do we think the biggest discussions or topics are going to be at the 2024 summit? Darrell?
Yeah, well, I kind of actually just said that. So in the sense, I do think the next year, obviously between, we talk about open banking a lot here. I almost loathe the word open banking because that's foundational. It's really about connected finance and what are the applications and what ends up happening once you actually have a framework in place around open banking. So the role that connected finance plays for businesses, for B2B, for consumers, and what sort of transformational things that happen there. If you think of the last 20 years in commerce, right? The first 10 years being the battle of online versus offline, right? There was this new channel and everything that went on there. And then the last decade has more been about omni-channel and the integration between the two. And think of all the different ways that you've changed the way you buy, the way you shop, the way you order, the way you interact with merchants and consumers. It's changed massively over the last 10 years. Well, think of that same thing in a world of connected finance. And what's the role between a real-time payment system and connected finance, how that changes the way you interact with all of your transactions, whether that be financial, whether that be health, whether that be government, et cetera. So, yeah.
Good. Layial, what are you looking forward to next year?
All jokes aside, I hope we're not still talking about when is open banking coming or, other things, when are they happening. I hope we're not talking about those anymore. I think we've kind of had those conversations ad nauseum at this point. I do think, so I agreed with everything that Darrell said. I think what would be also really great to see to continue to see happening in the next summit as well is a lot of conversation around financial literacy, but also consumer understanding of products and how they're using them and how their data is going to be managed. So if we have to talk about open banking, hopefully it's talking about it in terms of, well, how do we educate the consumers so they can make the right decisions, which I saw some conversations happening here around that. So that would be really, really exciting to see. I would love to be talking about Canadian best case practices globally, or examples of concrete examples that are happening here. So that would be really wonderful in terms of the applications and the products that we're able to use and serve.
Good, thanks. Cyrielle?
I'm thinking about something else. So I'd like to see, how we're going to talk about, we're talking about offline and online. I'm thinking about the traditional payment method merging with the alternative payment method and how this brings together, because they might be in two different environments, but for a consumer, it's kind of the same experience. They don't really see the difference. So how do we continue to see more those two words being embedded? So the virtual currencies, the metaverse, you can go up further into the traditional. So how these become just one payments experience and how we see those use cases that can bring these together. I think also it's talking about that, and it was talking in the panel earlier, AI. I think we're going to see a little bit more AI and how this is bringing payments, from how do you help with authentication up to digital ID, but also make just the process easier and more seamless and more like completely effortless, and go up to smart contracts. So I think we're going to start shifting this conversation like that, because more and more companies and fintechs are thinking about this, how we can bring this to the marketplace, and how payments with other industries are embedded as well, and just become at once, because nobody comes and say, hey, I'm going to make a payment. Payments is part of something else experience. So how do we bring that together and converge all those different words and all those different tools to, at the end, what it's always matter the most is just the value to the end user. So I think those conversations will start to be brought up a bit more actual concrete use cases.
Absolutely. Okay, well, that's a wrap. It's been an absolute pleasure to reflect on the last 3 days with the three of you. And I will now turn it over to Gary Foster, who is the chair of the Payments Canada Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.